So, welcome to Writerly Writings, and I'm delighted today to be talking to Clare Hey, who is my editor, which means she who must be obeyed.
That's what I like to hear, Mike.
And the whole idea today is I just want to get a view from a publishing house about all the different stages that a book has to go through before it actually ends up in print.
Yep.
So, last week, Clare, I delivered the latest manuscript to you.
Yep.
Which was very heavy, wasn't it? It was an email.
Exactly. Very heavy. Although in the olden days we did used to get manuscript delivered by post, which I'm sure as an author must have been quite a nerve-wracking moment of putting your great work in an envelope and not knowing you'll ever see it again.
It wasn't just nerve-wracking, it was expensive. The postage was hideous.
Exactly. And then wait a couple of days and then hope your editor might have got it.
Yep.
So
whole and intact and not completely ripped apart. Because the trouble was, if you put it into a standard A4 size gusseted envelope, then very often you're looking at 600-700 pages sometimes, and the damn thing would rip apart and fall apart. But okay, so you get a manuscript.
Yep.
What happens?
So first off, I put the manuscript onto my Kindle, or other e-reading devices are available, because I like to read as the first draft as a normal reader. So I will put it onto my e-reader and I will take it away with me, and I'll find somewhere quiet and I'll read it. Seems like the most obvious first step.
I must admit, because I bought, when I'm an early adopter because I'm an idiot, but I got one of the first iPads because I thought it would be much more like reading a draft as a book. So I did exactly that. I got the iPad so that I could read it, but the trouble was that then I wanted to make adjustments to it and I wanted to make notes on it, and I found that those early iPads were so slow and so...
Yeah, it's really fiddly.
It was terrible.
Yeah,
yes. But
exactly. So I definitely don't make notes on that. So I read it completely as a reader. I might make notes separately, but I want to read it to have my own natural response to it. And then hopefully without too much delay to you while you're sitting at home biting your nails, I will then come back to you and say either it's a masterpiece or it's unpublishable or it's great. I've got various notes and I'll come back to you shortly.
So usually you'll submit some very detailed comments about if you think that the story needs any changing, then you'll submit that to the author.
So the next process for me then is to print out the manuscript and to read it much more slowly as an editor this time instead of as a reader, making notes on every line if necessary in terms of the detail of it, but also thinking about the structure of the whole. So I'd give you my notes, which are a general note in terms of the characterisation, the structure, the plot, any holes, any places where I think that it needs to go faster or slower. Normally where I want some more bloodthirsty battles.
You do like that.
And then a more detailed notes directly onto the manuscript. So I'll print that out, read that, but then I'll make the notes on screen so that I can get them to you easily.
And then I, the author, do all of the amendments that you want.
Yep.
Give you the manuscript again, but then you don't necessarily look at it at that stage, do you?
I read it again at that stage.
Do you? Okay.
Yeah, I read it again to make sure that you've done what I told you to do. Because not everyone does. And also, actually, my notes are suggestions. They're not necessarily, edicts for you to follow.
Yeah.
And also, I want to check that it's reading well and that my notes made sense and that the novel is the best novel for it. And then at that stage, assuming that I'm happy, I will send it to an outside copy editor.
Right, so the copy editor then is the person who looks for the general flow of the story, make sure that all the loose ends are tied up, but also grammar, punctuation, formatting. The copy editor will be a fresh eye in terms of any last loose ends. Hopefully you and I will have spotted them all, but inevitably there's something that we haven't. It's always the case. I don't. Anyway.
Yeah, and so the copy editor will notice all of those small things, but also we'll be going through the entire manuscript for grammatical errors, any typos, any sentences which don't quite make sense, or any historical inaccuracies, which of course in your case there are never any.
Never.
And any issues where maybe the character has blue eyes to start with and maybe 50 pages later he has brown eyes. Making sure that people are pregnant for 9 months, that sort of thing. And then makes lots of notes which then come to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's always a joy to receive that letter that has all the copy editor's comments spread over several pages. I'm sure that Mike's thought about this, but does he realise that Baldwin's become Beringer and Beringer's become Baldwin? Yes, that sort of thing, which is always a joy. So, is it at that point already that you're thinking about what cover the book will have?
I've thought about what cover the book will have well before that stage.
Oh, right, okay.
So the process of any book in-house starts usually a year before publication. So a year out, we publish your books in June.
Yeah.
So June the year before, we will have a launch meeting internally where we basically talk about all the books that we'll publish the next June and what we're planning on doing with them. So at that stage, we will talk about the title. Hopefully there'll be a title by that point. There might not be. We'll talk about a cover approach, and we'll talk about how we want to sell it and who to and what we're going to do in a general sense.
Right, okay. And then you have your own in-house artists, or?
Yeah, we have a design team in-house. So I will then provide a cover brief straight after the launch meeting, so a year in advance as well.
Right.
Which sometimes I'll come to you and ask for some details. We'll normally I'll have a sense of what the story will be, what the setting will be, when the period is. And so I will take those details and go to the cover art team, and I'll launch it to them in a cover briefing.
And then that is going to be going on in the background while you're dealing with the copy editor.
Yep.
And of course,
and while you're writing it, yeah.
I'll be then amending things to suit any issues that the copy editor's picked up.
Yep.
And then I submit the manuscript again.
Yep.
To your joy, clearly.
By this point, I've probably read it, still not as many times as you've read it.
Well, I will have read it 30 odd times by that stage. So it makes you pull your hair out, because by the time you've gone beyond 10 or 15 reads, you can't see anything, because you're seeing what you think is there, not what actually is there.
Yeah.
So that's why we then have a proofreader.
Yeah. So in between those stages, though.
All right.
So we do the copy edit on a hard copy, as we call it, which is on a piece of paper with a pencil marking. So then I will take all of that and I will give it to the production team. The production team will then send it to a typesetter who are out of house, and they will take all of those markings and they will transcribe it into the typeset page proofs.
Right.
So they'll take the Word document that you will have supplied, but then they'll go through manually making all the changes that you and the copy editor have made to the text.
So it's not like the good old days when they'd retype the whole thing. They're taking the digital text.
They tend
but
not to
they're
retype
reformatting.
it because they don't need to
Why
anymore.
bother?
Yeah. But they do design the text, so they will flow it into the template of, you have a set style for your book, so they'll flow it into that template.
I see. And that's when that comes back, the proofreader will get a copy and so will I.
Yep.
And we both go through that proof copy at the same time.
Exactly, and the proofreader will then be checking against the pages of the copy edit, which I'll have sent her a copy of, and I normally send you a copy of as well, to make sure that all the changes have been taken in. So she's thoroughly going through line by line to make sure that everything's been taken in, but also that there are not any other corrections that haven't been missed. There are inevitably a few, and you're checking as well to make sure. Because at that stage it looks like a real book, or more like a real book. So sometimes things come out that you might not have noticed before. You read it more as a reader, and you understand, that sentence is weird, or
Well, I also cheat as well, because my wife is my in-house proofreader, so she goes through it in the first week, and then I have it for the second week. So, so we still have
So actually, we have two proofreaders, but inevitably, you always find something slips through.
That is almost it's a given, isn't it? So. Okay, at the end of that stage, the proofreader and I send you our copies. Then those amendments are put through to the typesetters.
I collate those sets. So I get the proofread and I get yours, and I literally sit there, page by page, and I take your corrections and I put them onto the proofreader's corrections. Or sometimes you email them to me, and so I'll write them, take them off there, and I'll write them onto the proofreader set. At that point, also, I'll come back to you with any questions that the proofreader might have. If I can't resolve them myself, or if it's something that I'm a bit confused by, and then I'll make those notes all into one copy, which will then go back to the production department and then to the typesetters.
And then you can press the green button that says print.
No.
Oh.
No, because then those corrections, the second page proofs, come back to me, and then I have to painstakingly, page by page, go through like this and check that the correction that's been marked on that page has been taken into that page. And often that happened perfectly, but sometimes it hasn't. Sometimes they put it on the wrong line. Sometimes they've messed around with the flow of the page. Sometimes they just haven't noticed the correction. So invariably I'll then send some more corrections back to the typesetters to go through one more stage.
Then you press the green go?
Well, not necessarily, because there might be a couple more corrections they still haven't taken in, but then maybe at that stage you might have sort of but because we're quite a few months down the line, you might have delivered to me the first chapter of the next book, if we're talking about. So then we think, oh, we could put the first chapter into the back. It's a nice teaser. So, but yeah, invariably then we're ready to go to print. As long as we have the cover sorted and the blurb written and the quotes from other authors in.
And then you've also got the sales team to get involved.
Yes. Well, the sales team are involved right from the start.
Right. So they're involved in the year before
Yeah.
with the planning and so on. But at some point they will be taking books to, for example, W.H. Smith's. W.H. Smith's will say, that's a really good looking book, but I hate the cover, I can't have that.
Yep.
So
that will normally be 6 months before publication. So the designer will have come back from me briefing to the designer. They will come back with a few options of appropriate images, and we will see them in our cover art meeting. We'll look at them on a shelf like this to see which one stands out the most, to see how it will look in a real bookshop. At which point we'll pick the one we like.
Very good.
We'll pick the one we like, and then I send it to you.
Yeah.
Hope that you like it too. Hope that it's appropriate for the period. Sometimes it's not, and we have to go back to the drawing board. And we then all agree that this is the cover that we like. At that point, then the sales team will go to the retailers and will sell it. And so we hope that they will agree with us.
I see. Well, I think that is possibly as much information that most viewers can cope with for now. So Claire, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
And I think we'll just call a halt there. Thanks a lot.
Before we all die with exhaustion.